The most awkward trophy ceremony in the history of the WTA Finals has just exposed a civil war that is tearing women's tennis apart from the inside. You have likely seen the clip by now, where Elena Rybakina, fresh off a record-breaking $5 million payday in Riyadh, publicly snubbed the new WTA CEO, Portia Archer, by refusing to stand next to her for the official trophy photo. On the surface, it looked like a moment of petty disrespect from a champion who should have been celebrating, and that is certainly the narrative the establishment wants you to believe. But the reality is far darker, and it involves a secret suspension, a bitter general feud, and a blistering attack from tennis legend Pam Shriver that has completely shifted the conversation. This was not just a missed photo opportunity, it was a calculated protest against the people running the sport. Today, we are decoding the viral breakdown that everyone is talking about, and we are going to answer the 3 specific questions the mainstream coverage is ignoring. First, what specifically happened behind the scenes in early 2025 regarding Rybakina's coach that made this public snub inevitable? Second, why did Pam Shriver decide to try and destroy Rybakina publicly with the comments about the original 9? And was she actually right? And third, what does this open rebellion mean for the 2026 season now that we are watching a top player effectively go to war with her own tour? We have the Hawkeye receipts, the deleted timeline of the suspension, and the press conference quotes that reveal exactly what Rybakina is thinking. Let's look at the tape. To understand the gravity of what happened, you have to look closely at the 10-second mark of the ceremony footage. Rybakina had just defeated Aryna Sabalenka in the 3rd set tiebreak to win the WTA Finals, which is the most prestigious title outside of a Grand Slam. It should have been a moment of pure joy. You see WTA CEO Portia Archer step forward. Archer is the new guard, the executive brought in to modernize the tour. The standard protocol here is incredibly simple, because the winner accepts the trophy, shakes hands with the dignitaries, and poses for a class photo with the sponsor and the CEO. But Rybakina refused to play along. She accepted the trophy, but when the photographer gestured for the group shot, Rybakina's state planted on her mark, leaving a visible, awkward gap between her and Archer. You can actually see Archer glance sideways, realizing she is being iced out. It was not a mistake. Rybakina looked directly at the setup and chose not to move. Social media immediately caught fire, with fans calling it rude, cold, and unprofessional. But then the narrative shifted because Pam Shriver, one of the most influential voices in tennis and a direct link to the sport's founders, dropped a quote that turned this into a moral referendum on gratitude. Shriver did not hold back. She went to social media and posted a statement saying, "You have to imagine winning more prize money in one tournament than the entire original 9 earned over their collective careers." Then dissing the WTA CEO because the CEO has tried to ensure stronger safeguards in your sport. She ended the post by saying, "It is hard to imagine." This is the hook that dragged the story out of the tennis bubble into the general sports news. Shriver is not just a commentator here, because she is an institution. By invoking the original 9, who were the women that signed a dollar contract in 1970 to start the WTA, she was accusing Rybakina of spitting on the legacy that allowed her to win $5 million in a single week. But here's where the expectations versus reality gap widened significantly. Shriver framed this as a bratty player disrespecting the tour that feeds her. The reality is that Rybakina's snub had nothing to do with money, and everything to do with a specific word Shriver used in her tweet, which was safeguards. To understand why Rybakina would risk her reputation to snub the CEO, we have to go back to January 2025. This is the context that the broadcasts completely glossed over. For years, there has been unease regarding Rybakina's coach, Stefano Vukov. You have seen the clips from the 2023 Australian Open where Vukov was yelling at her box and gesturing wildly while Rybakina looked stoic but rattled. It became a talking point. Pam Shriver herself was one of the loudest critics back then, publicly tweeting that she hoped Rybakina would find a coach who treats her with respect. Fast forward to early 2025. Rybakina and Vukov had split, then reunited. But suddenly, Vukov disappeared from the tour. The official line was vague. But we now know, thanks to leaked reports and eventual confirmation, that the WTA had provisionally suspended Vukov. The charge was abuse of authority and violations of the code of conduct. This was not a minor infraction. The WTA, under its new safeguarding protocols, launched an investigation into Vukov's behavior. They interviewed other players, coaches, and support staff. They concluded that his conduct crossed the line into abusive territory, and they banned him. Here's the twist that changes everything. Rybakina did not want him banned. According to multiple sources and Rybakina's own guarded comments, she did not participate in the prosecution of her coach. In fact, she viewed the investigation not as protection, but as an intrusion. She has repeatedly stated that Vukov pushes her, yes, but that she is an adult who makes her own choices. When the WTA suspended him, they effectively told the world number 4 that she didn't know what was good for her. Vukov appealed the ban, and he won. By August 2025, the suspension was lifted or modified enough to allow him back in. But the damage was done. Rybakina felt that the WTA, led by the executive team that Portia Archer now represents, had spent 6 months trying to dismantle her team against her will. So when Shriver talks about safeguards, she sees a benevolent tour protecting a young woman. When Rybakina hears safeguards, she hears paternalism. She hears a tour that tried to fire her employee without her consent. That snub on the podium was Rybakina saying, "You tried to take him out, but I won anyway, and I don't need your approval." Now let's re-examine Pam Shriver's destruction of Rybakina. Why did she go so hard? Shriver represents the soul of the WTA. She played in an era where women had to fight for every scrap of coverage. The original 9 risked their careers so that players like Rybakina could play for millions. When Shriver sees Rybakina earning $5 million in Riyadh, a sum that literally exceeds the career earnings of legends like Billie King Jean, she expects a certain level of corporate deference. In Shriver's worldview, the CEO of the WTA is the guardian of that legacy. Snubbing the CEO is snubbing the business that makes you rich. But there is a massive generational disconnect here. Rybakina is not playing in 1970. She is an independent contractor in a global entertainment market. In her eyes, the prize money is not a gift. It is what she earned by being one of the best athletes on the planet. The WTA is not her mother. It's her tournament organizer. And if the organizer tries to interfere with her private hiring decisions, she feels no obligation to smile for their marketing photos. Shriver's critique backfired with a large section of the fan base because it felt like she was telling Rybakina to shut up and play. It implied that because Rybakina is paid well, she forfeits the right to be angry at the administration. Shriver's tweet suggested that money should buy compliance. Rybakina's silence suggested that dignity, as she defines it, is not for sale. This is not the first time Shriver and Rybakina have clashed. Remember the comments from the Inside In podcast. Shriver has been beating the drum about Vukov's toxicity for 2 years. Rybakina has likely seen every tweet and heard every clip. When Shriver publicly scolded her after the final, it wasn't an isolated critique. It was the culmination of a 2-year campaign where Shriver has positioned herself as the moral arbiter of Rybakina's career. For Rybakina, Shriver is not a neutral analyst. She's part of the establishment that tried to ban her coach. If you think I'm reading too much into a body language moment, look at the payout which comes from the post-match press conference. Reporters, sensing the blood in the water, asked Rybakina about the snub and the relationship with the WTA leadership. A lesser player might have dodged the question. Rybakina, in her trademark monotone, delivered a line that confirmed everything. She said that "I think they are all doing their job. We had the opportunity to have conversations, but in the end, it never happened. So we're all doing our job, and I think we're going to keep it this way." When she says we're all doing our job, the translation is, "I play tennis, you organize tournaments, so stay out of my box." She also mentioned the opportunity to have conversations. This is a direct reference to the investigation. Rybakina is implying that the WTA made decisions about Vukov without truly engaging with her, the person actually involved in the relationship. She feels she was talked about, not talked to. This quote proves that the snub was not a heat-of-the-moment lapse. It was a strategic drawing of lines. Rybakina is essentially declaring independence. She will play the events, she will take the checks, but she will not participate in the political theater of the WTA. This leads us to the most uncomfortable question of all, one that Shriver's tweet accidentally cracked open. Who gets to decide what a healthy player and coach relationship looks like? The position of the WTA is clear. They have a duty of care. If they see a coach berating a player, manipulating them, or causing emotional distress, they have a legal and moral obligation to step in. The safeguards Shriver mentioned are there to prevent another abusive situation like we saw in the late 90s, and to stop abuse before it destroys a life. From the tour's perspective, suspending Vukov was a necessary intervention based on evidence they collected. But from Rybakina's perspective, this is infantilization. She is 26 years old. She is a Grand Slam champion. If she chooses to work with a coach who is intense, demanding, or even abrasive, is that not her right? By stepping in to save her, the WTA is implying she is too weak or brainwashed to save herself. Shriver's tweet missed this nuance completely. By focusing on the money and the original 9, she ignored the autonomy argument. Rybakina is not protesting safety, she is protesting the removal of her agency. It is a classic conflict of liberty versus safety. The WTA chose safety, Rybakina chose liberty, and Pam Shriver chose to yell about the paycheck. So where do we go from here? This rivalry between Rybakina and the WTA front office is not going away. The 2026 season is going to be defined by this friction. We have a top 3 player who is actively hostile toward the tour's leadership. You can expect the WTA to double down on PR. You will see Portia Archer at every trophy ceremony, smiling wider, trying to force the optics of unity. You can expect Rybakina to retreat further. She will likely skip non-mandatory media, limit her engagements, and treat the tour purely as a transactional workspace. And expect Pam Shriver to keep talking. She has staked her reputation on this issue. Every time Vukov raises his voice in 2026, Shriver will be there to remind us of the suspension that almost was. But the biggest loser here might be the fans. Instead of celebrating Rybakina's incredible dominance on the court, specifically her serve, her movement, and her mental steel, we are talking about handshake snubs and corporate politics. The reality has overtaken the expectation of sport. Rybakina has proven she can win without the love of the WTA. The question is, can the WTA afford to have a champion who hates them? Let's recap what we have proved today. The snub was a deliberate protest against the WTA's secret suspension of Stefano Vukov earlier this year. Shriver's attack was based on a gratefulness argument that ignores Rybakina's desire for autonomy over her own team. The conflict is a fundamental disagreement about whether the tour has the right to police coaching styles in the name of safeguarding. Rybakina is not just a quiet player anymore. She is a rebel with a very loud racket. And she just told the CEO exactly where she stands, which is 5 feet away with her back turned. If you want the one insider takeaway to sound smart at your tennis club this weekend, say this. Everyone thinks Rybakina is quiet, but that handshake snub was the loudest thing she has ever said. She is basically telling the WTA that her loyalty to her team is stronger than her contract with the tour. This story is evolving fast, and the Rybakina and Vukov dynamic is just one piece of the puzzle. If you want to understand the actual tactics Rybakina used to win that final against Sabalenka, specifically the on-court adjustments that Vukov actually helped her make, you need to see the technical breakdown. I have curated a specific set of videos in the Tennis Playbook playlist right here on the screen. It dives into the serve mechanics and the specific patterns Rybakina is using to dominate the tour right now. Click that playlist to see the player, not the politics. I will see you there.